time for another round of Brandy. Candid conversations over cocktails about all things brand with your hosts, Reilly Newman and Scott Saunders, the brand developers behind Motif Brands.
So I recently started watching F1 races, and this is only due to Apple, oddly enough. So they had their big smashing hit with, the delicious Brad Pitt.
I can't believe you just said that.
What? Everyone's thinking it.
Well,
Everyone's thinking it. When you think of Brad
Pitt,
Pitt, you do think of, okay, he's a handsome guy.
We're heterosexual males,
cool
but we've got it. You'd be in denial if you looked at Brad Pitt and go, that guy's a stunning hunk of a specimen of a man.
He is a stud.
So he's a stud. But F1, I have not seen it yet. I want to, but right now we kind of cycle on some of our streaming platforms. So right now we don't have Apple TV.
So briefly, Apple started with the F1 thing. I think Brad Pitt's Plan B, which is his production studio, was behind F1. They were showing the intricacies, the awesomeness of F1, and it was the director of Maverick from Top Gun. So you got these really incredible shots. Just really, really well done movie. And what was really cool about it is Apple's approach to it is that even with the trailer, when you watch it on your iPhone, you flip your iPhone horizontally, and it had this haptic response of vibration on the phone when it was going through the trailer.
That's crazy.
Which, again, no one's done that. So it was just really
Ingenious.
cool, innovative, very Apple. And then F1, if you're familiar with the F1 brand, it's very sleek, very sexy. It's a
match made in heaven.
Yeah, perfect between Apple and F1.
Yeah, because when they were making the movie, I heard in a podcast interview with Brad Pitt, and they were talking about, he was talking a lot about the film and all the work that they had to do with the actual racers, race teams, the F1 league, or it was they immersed themselves literally into that sport for a little bit to film this, and had a lot of cooperation from a lot of F1 racers and cars and brand things like that. So now Apple's now partnered more. They've doubled down on F1 beyond the film.
So it was genius because then it was like a month ago, I get an alert from Apple TV on my iPhone, and it's like, oh, you can now stream F1 with Apple TV exclusive.
F1 races.
So they landed the exclusive rights to stream F1 races. So now I've been watching it, and this is the way they line it up on the app, the UI, everything is great. And then when you're watching it, they have it all, it looks very sleek and very Apple-esque. And it's just trippy now seeing where you have like F1 logo up in one corner, and then you have the Apple TV logo.
Yeah.
It's just cool seeing that. Because I know with MLB, Apple, started dipping their toe in the water with that. But they went to whole more lengths where they're able to fold in the F1 brand, which is also associated with very luxury.
Well, an entire sport.
Brands.
It's not just a brand. I mean, yes, F1 is a brand. There's a visual brand to it, but it's an entire sport.
It's the fastest growing sport right now, and now it's becoming Americanized. You're getting more Americans involved with it, and they're interested in it. And then the brands that are just associated with it, you have a lot of luxury brands, and it's just to me it was like a genius move. And the way Apple is executing it, where they have these super cool little montages that are black and white and showing.
Well, it's such a high precision sport, and I think they get to understand the precision of these cars, what they're capable, what they're asked to do, like physically, what the drivers are put through, all of that. That speaks into Apple's baseline design. Their brand's canon, right? Yeah. Which is kind of leading into a little bit mostly kind of what we're going to be talking about today, is that idea of when you add a story, a narrative, a message, anything, when you're tacking on to your brand, whether it's an ad campaign, whatever you're doing as a brand, if it doesn't, and you're doing it to add or broaden your brand, if it doesn't fall back on its canon, it's the rules, it's the standards by which the brand or intellectual property is existing, if you're not able to do that, then it falls flat. It feels wrong. And an example of this, right? We bagged it in the past. Right, Reilly, was Jaguar.
Yeah.
I mean, they did it. They did they were trying to be different just to be different, but they were creating a whole narrative about the brand of Jaguar now that didn't lean into the decades of the brand canon that it had built, and think of the canon as a collective works. So if you think of a brand having a collective work, right, of everything that the brand, it has to kind of all fit together and be founded on the same rules, the same things like that.
When you do think of the word like canon, I always think of, fiction, you think of video games, you think of books, you think of movies, you think of a lot of these things that are these stories upon lore.
Can I dare say it? Harry Potter.
It's Harry Potter.
If you know Reilly and I at all, you know we're Potterheads. We love,
bunch of Potterheads.
Yeah, if you go to our website, you might find a little secret ode to the Wizarding world on our website. But
it's an Easter egg. You got to find it.
It's a little, it's nothing big, but it's kind of fun. Hopefully, there's people out there that understand that Harry Potter is not just a movie franchise. It was based off 7 books, and an example of that is they built a 3-film franchise called the Fantastical Beasts series with Newt Scamander and some other characters. It was based in the United States, but the point of it is that it a whole nother brand extension birthed because it was based on the canon of Harry Potter. It brought up a character, Newt Scamander, who had written a book, The Fantastical Beasts and Where to Find Them, and that was literally a textbook used by the students in Harry Potter and in the world of Hogwarts and the Wizarding world, and then to have a Ministry of Magic that is in the United States, whereas the UK has their Ministry of Magic based out of London, but it was based in the canon of reality, right? You've got real places, King's Cross Station. You've got London. You've got things that you're used to seeing, and then there's a veil of story that breaks through of, well, what if wizards, actually live in that world? And so they're able to build a fantastic world, but it's still based under that premise. So when a new story is developed, it's following the same rules. We're talking about intellectual properties, but your brand is an intellectual property.
Yeah, I can already hear people. Well, I'm not a movie. I'm not a TV show. I'm not I'm not Yellowstone. I'm not a book. I'm not this or that. And that's where I think you kind of have to change your mindset a little and realizing that these are brands, these are conceptualized kind of different universes and worlds. And the same goes for your business, where yes, your business does deliver a service or offering or product or whatever it is, but the brand is still intellectual property. It's still IP is what you would call it. And you need to be able to help kind of not only establish it, but also then start growing it and scaffolding up so that the IP has depth to it. And that's where you get a lot of kind of mistakes happen with like for Jaguar, where it was like, okay, how do we change the brand, right? It was a full rebrand, and they're trying to do something that's totally different, and then they go into left field and they just grab something out of thin air and go, oh, it's just different. We're challengers. We always challenge the status quo and all this. And whatever, that's cliche upon cliche. But also the association with Jaguar, I don't believe anyone had that association with Jaguar.
That's where it gets back to what is the brand perceptions canon, making sure it always falls back on self.
Yeah. And the same thing with like, okay, let's compare stories. You have Wizarding World of Harry Potter, you have Star Wars, you have Lord of the Rings, all essentially are heroes' journeys, right? They're all following almost the identical recipe. Yeah. With their own nuances, the classic
villain, princess to save, all those things.
The nuance though are the layers that they're building from that of going, okay, we not only have established a reality, but we've suspended reality and created some alternatives that are now folding in, whether that is a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, or in London, and there happens to be wizards among us, or there's this place called Middle Earth or whatever. And you're introducing characters and being able to fold in things that way. And it's the same thing with like a business. It's like all these cars are the same. All these car brands are selling you the same thing. They're selling you a vehicle that has 4 wheels and an engine. Now, you have different interpretations of that, of going, oh, it's a V6, or this one is electric, or this one is luxury, or whatever it could be. They're doing the nuances on top of that. So the business model, like Scott was saying, is like, for the most part, it's selling the same thing functionally. So everything else is perception and based off of the more subjective matters of like nuance, and that's why having that distinction in that matters. The only other option you'd have is that if you're completely reinventing how a business model is, then you're in a completely different, you're an inventor. You're not an entrepreneur. Like you're inventing something, and that's a totally different path. So when you do look at the actual kind of base of it is going, okay, I have to first establish this foundational layer of the brand that we can all agree on. And this is the same thing with, again, stories of having this reality, and then you start building realities on top of that. And with your brand, it's really the same thing of going, okay, what is this foundational layer of who we are? What is this truth that we're delivering? And, like for Apple, for example, just because it's well known. It's like, think different. So Apple going about that, that's a foundational layer that then they go, okay, everything we do, that becomes part of our DNA. That is the foundation of going, okay, yes, everyone knows computers. Well, back in the 80s, it was still a new technology, but let's make it familiar. Let's make it approachable. Let's make it a certain way. And all that is, quote unquote, different. And then from there, they've expanded upon that and added layer after layer after layer.
All right. I was just thinking, as you were reminding me and the rest of us, that slogan, think different. I'm like, okay, so how does that differ from taking on and absorbing F1? Sports broadcasting done through the lens of Apple is approaching it differently than how everyone else has done it or is doing it. And that, again, supports the canon of Apple's think different.
And F1 is kind of the perfect match, just because F1 is one of the only sports other than like NASCAR or something like that, where F1 is so highly dependent on the product, the vehicle that the driver is driving. It's like horse racing. You can have the horse and it's bred a certain way, and then you need the jockey, and the jockey's trained, the driver's trained, they have certain attributes about them, but also the vehicle, the race
the
car,
horseshoer, the guy zipping on a horseshoe
is designed. And even Apple has this shot and it just shows like a F1. Yeah. And it's just like, it's just sitting there. It was like shot like an Apple product. And I was like, that alone that's the bridge, right? That's the layer where we're going back to, again, foundational layer of Apple reality of, well-designed products, all about accuracy, all about precision, all about all these great things and quality and like optimizing. And then you look at F1, and the whole thesis of F1 is who can design the better vehicle and then put the better driver in that vehicle. You put all the sensors on it
and a more talented crew around the vehicle, because it's that you got pit stops, and that's, again, it's such a team effort.
So this actually does go into, I haven't talked about it before, but it's Tolkien's, his realities. I mean, Scott and I have talked about it, but Tolkien, let me back up. So when you think of the word entertainment means to suspend. And just like if you're telling a story, or if you're watching a movie, or even if you're in a sales conversation, there's a suspension that's happening. And that suspension is only able to happen when you're going step by step. Whether it's a sales conversation or telling a story, you're checking in with your listener and you're going, okay, are we on the same page still, right? There's a feedback, and you're going, okay, then this happened. And then they acknowledge, okay, that's the next step. We're still on the same page. We're going. If there's a gap in there, the suspension fails and the story's dropped. There's the communication's dropped, and you either lose the sale or you lose the person's interest in the story. The same thing with your brand is that going, okay, if we establish we're on the same page, this is what we are as a company, this is the foundation, this is the reality, and then you start folding in these layers upon layers, and you're scaffolding up to create depth, you have to make sure that the person is following you every step of the way, or you're going to lose them. And that's where even you look at Marvel. You look at how Marvel is taken when Stan Lee passed away, or when he sold it to Disney as well. It was a failing. Marvel was almost done. It was like bankrupt. Disney takes it, reinvigorates it, and you see what they've done with Spider-Man from that point to where it is now, where now you have like multiverse, you have animated, you got like all these different things going on. You have Nicolas Cage coming out with Spider-Man now, and it all somehow makes sense. But every step along the way, they're going, okay, here we are. Do you agree on that? Okay, handshake, next step. So, but it's always going back to the core, and that's this term called recursion, where you're able to, okay, this story within a story keeps growing, but it's always going back to that core, so that we're always on the same page. We're always agreeing on the met terms of, oh, this is how the physics work. This is how the world works. This is the reality. And that's what kind of like Tolkien talks about when he would write, is that you have to be able to get the viewer or the reader at that point to agree on the reality. Mm-hmm. And that's only then where you can introduce the second reality.
Okay, well, it reminds me Tolkien or Christopher Nolan's film, Inception. Yeah, where again, it was like a dream within a dream within a dream.
Like, what the
but
heck?
As soon as you understood through the explanation of DiCaprio's character of explaining how this dream world works, and that there are certain rules too, right? There were certain rules within that very strange premise, and it was locked within that. It made for a very interesting movie, but it was very. There's people that can watch it and go, I still don't understand what's going on, but it doesn't matter. It's a very entertaining movie. But that brings into the principle of recursion, right? Isn't that the technical term for it, where it's like it wraps itself inside of it and comes back around?
Yeah, it's more of like if I'm telling a story, then I'm putting a layer on top of that that's based off, it extends the story, but it's also based off of the principles that are already set in place. And recursion happens in physics, it happens in mathematics, happens in programming, where when a computer is programmed, it's able to make up these new commands that are way down the line only because of these mathematical principles that were set in place before that steps ahead. So it's scaffolding. And when you think of scaffolding, if you're working on a building, you scaffold up step by step by step. You don't just start at the top and then magically kind of floating there or something.
What's funny, because when you think about going deep, anytime you use the term going deep in a story or in, can you go a little deeper? It's like you're at surface level and you're digging downward. And you're trying to, if you're lucky, hit some bedrock, right? In the layer. And what we're talking about is different, because it's really, you're basing it on the cornerstone, off that bedrock foundation, and you're building each layer. So you're creating depth, but you're doing it upward motion, not downward motion, to create the depth of your brand, of your story.
Yeah, and I feel like it's even, because I'll talk to clients like, okay, the brand should have layers, right? Because the layers, whether that's a solid concept, and then contextually, depending on how the brand interacts with people, what touch points, or in certain situations, you create layers, and that allows for different sides of its personality to show, or different engagements and experiences. And those layers are coming from the core going out, like an onion. But sometimes a client will be like, oh, I need to get depth, so we got to go, like Scott was saying, we got to go dig and find something. And that's where I feel like you fall into the Jaguar scenario, where you're just digging to find something and go, okay, this sounds intriguing, this sounds interesting, let's just pick that. And I found this rock over here, or whatever it is, or it's worse and it becomes a rabbit hole, and you're just falling indefinitely, and you think you're finding depth, but it's more of just a free fall. And that's exactly what happened to Jaguar, is that you get this free fall effect where the brand, they threw their whole audience, the whole world, even people who don't buy Jaguar, into this free fall. Like, what does this represent anymore? Like, why? Same thing happened to Cracker Barrel, where Cracker Barrel overthrew what they had, their heritage, everything, what was familiar about them, right? The lore, the core, the base got thrown out, and then they go, this is what it is now, because they were looking for depth, they were looking for a new market, they were looking for all these things, and then it just was a free fall. And so the proper way to do it would be let's go back to the base and start scaffolding up to create that depth and that interest and that appeal by creating more height to it. Because then from there, you get a better perspective. You get a better view, you get more interest, you have different layers you can throw in there. And that's how you're going to reach the markets, is going based off the base and scaffolding from there and layering it in, so that it's recursion is happening, and it's going back to the base, going, hey, this is still the principle. This is what we're agreeing on. Because even you think about Inception, it's super complex, right? Layers on layers on layers. But the concept of Inception, Christopher Nolan's film, the concept of it is just dreams. Like, it's something that everyone is familiar with, everyone experiences, and then they took that one simple familiar concept and then just scaffolded from there.
Yeah.
And then that's what, when you think of the base of there, it's like, that's limbo. And that's where the whole story then starts kind of creating itself. But I think there's just something to think about when you do imagine how, even like in language, you do have this same kind of principle happening, where words only mean something because of the roots that they have, Latin roots, or their history. And we're able to then go, okay, even recursion, recur, right? It's like the Latin, or Greek, that's probably Latin, but the root of that is recur, to happen. It's coming back, right? There's this
back around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so even when we talked about motif before, it's like there's a pattern, there's something that is there that's reliable, and it's constantly knocking, and that goes into pretty much everything. Like I said, physics, language, writing, like literature, and even like songs, things like that. It's like the songs that you love always have a rhythm and a repetitive, there's something repetitive about it that we can count on. And that's the only way that, I don't know, our brains can attach something, remember it, find it appealing, or whatever
it makes it more easy to associate with it, to engage with it, because it fits the way our brains like to think. And so that is a plus when it's your brand.
Yeah. And it does go back to, like we talk about, with associations of going, okay, well, how do I get my brand to associate with this? It could be influencer, celebrity, or just a concept that's out there. It's like, okay, well, look at your base and look at how you can fold that in. What kind of layer are you going to build in that narrative branching out from there, where then you can add it to the canon? And sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it's too much of a stretch, and you go, oh, that just doesn't connect. It's
then
too
think
much
something
of a
else.
jump.
Then come up with a different idea, because if it doesn't work, don't force it. Don't break your own brand's collective work of canon in all of its touch points and all of its messaging and all of the things that you're trying to build and strengthen. You know, we talk about one of the pillars of a successful brand is consistency.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you can never change or slowly evolve, but it means that you're being consistent every step of the way, not redoing where you come from, but building on it. But it's not just a one-off that then it kind of, has no support, because everything else is on a different foundation. It's just,
it's like when you're watching a movie or a show and then they kind of throw something in from left field and you're kind of like, okay, that was a bit of a jump. Like, I see how they did that, but there's not enough bridge for you to fully accept that. So again, this goes back to words and kind of mindset and how you're approaching things, but being able to go, okay, well, if my brand is intellectual property, which it is, if you build a proper brand, that's going to increase the value of your business a lot, because it becomes an asset. It becomes actual intellectual property that you can grow and protect and actually sell.
Which is why some businesses sue other businesses for doing something similar that they have laid claim as that's part of our intellectual property. That's part of our methodology. That's part of our uniqueness as a brand. And they'll take it to court to try to make their case that they need to stop and assist, because it's something that they have done for their brand.
Yeah. And it's part of that asset, and it's protectable. So when you do think about your business as kind of this foundational model, every business should have a business model, but then around that you do have this intellectual property that is your brand, and be able to go, okay, well, how do I actually start growing that? Because you hear about it, growing a brand or whatever it is, and people just think that's, again, I feel like people get that confused with awareness. They think that growing a brand is just general awareness, and that's not the case. Growing a brand is creating depth, and the only way to do that is scaffolding and layering and going back to, again, the core of the brand. So a lot to chew on, and it all comes back to Harry Potter. So
yes, as all things right in the world should,
it's all
circle
wizarding
back around to Hogwarts and getting that letter from the owl.
Until next time,
cheers.
Cheers.